Chapter 25 Dr. Seward's Diary 11th October Evening. Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept. I think that none of us were surprised when we were asked to see Mrs. Harker, a little before the time of sunset. We have, of late, come to understand that sunrise and sunset are to her times of particular freedom, when her old self can be manifest without the controlling force subduing or restraining her, or inciting her into action. The mood or condition begins some half hour or more before actual sunrise or sunset, and lasts till either the sun is high, or whilst the clouds are still aglow with the rays streaming from above the horizon. At first, there's a sort of negative condition, as if some tie were loosened, and then the absolute freedom quickly follows. When, however, the freedom ceases, the change back or relapse quickly comes, proceeding only by a spell of warning silence. Tonight, when we met, she was somewhat constrained, and bore all the signs of an internal struggle. I put it down myself for her making a violent effort at the earliest instant she could do so. A few minutes, however, gave her complete control of herself. Then, motioning her husband to sit beside her on the sofa, where she was half reclining, she made the rest of us bring chairs up close. Taking her husband's hand in hers, she began. "We're all here together in freedom, for perhaps the last time. I know, dear, I know that you will always be with me to the end." This was to her husband, whose hand had, as we could see, tightened upon hers. "In the morning we go on to our task, and God only knows what may be in store for any of us. You're going to be so good to me to take me with you. I know that all the bravest men can do for a poor weak woman, whose soul perhaps is lost. No, not yet, but as at any rate at stake, you will do. But you must remember that I am not as you are. There is a poison in my blood, in my soul, which may destroy me, which must destroy me unless some relief comes to us. Oh, my friends, you know as well as I do that my soul is at stake, and though I know there is only one way out for me, you must not, and I must not take it." She looked appealingly at all of us in turn, beginning and ending with her husband. "What is that way?" asked Van Helsing in a hoarse voice. "What is that way which we must not, may not take?" "That I may die now, either by my own hand or that of another, before the greater evil is entirely wrought. I know, and you know, that were I once dead you could and would free my immortal soul, even as you did poor Lucy's. Were death, or the fear of death, the only thing that stood in my way, I would not shrink to die here, not amidst my friends who love me. But death is not all. I cannot believe that to die is in such a case, where there is hope before us and better task to be done, is God's will. Therefore, I, on my part, give up here the certainty of eternal rest, and go out into the dark where may be the blackest things that the world, or neither world, holds." We were silent, for we knew instinctively that this was only a prelude. The faces of the others were set, and Harker's grew ashen gray. Perhaps he guessed better than any of the rest of us what was coming. She continued. "This is what I can give to the hotchpot." I could not but note the quaint legal phrase which she used in such a place with all the seriousness. "What will each of you give? Your lives, I know?" She went on quickly. "That is easy for brave men. Your lives are God's, and you can give them back to him. But what will you give to me?" She looked again questioningly, but this time avoided her husband's face. Quincy seemed to understand. He nodded, and her face lit up.
Then I shall tell you plainly what I want, for there must be no doubtful master in this connection between us now. You must promise me, one and all, even you, my dear beloved husband, that, should the time come, you will kill me.
What is that time? A voice in Quincy's, but it was low and strained.
When you shall be convinced that I am so changed that it is better that I die than that I may live. When I am thus dead in the flesh, then you will, without a moment's delay, drive a stake through me and cut off my head, or do whatever else may be wanting to give me rest.
Quincy was the first to give rise after the pause. He knelt down before her, taking her hand in his, and said solemnly, I'm only a rough fellow, who hasn't perhaps lived as a man should to win such a distinction. But I swear to you, by all that I hold sacred and dear, that, should the time ever come, I shall not flinch from the duty that you have set on us. And I promise you, too, that I shall make all certain, for I am only doubtful I shall take it to the time that has come.
My true friend,
Was all she could say amid the fast-falling tears as, bending over, she kissed his hand.
I swear the same, my dear Madam Mina,
said Van Helsing. And I, said the Lord Godalming, each of them in turn kneeling to her, take the oath. I followed myself. Then her husband turned to her, one-eyed and with a greenish pallor which subdued any snowy whiteness of his hair, and asked, And must I too make such a promise, O my dear wife?
You too, my
Dearest, she said, with infinite yearning of pity in her voice and eyes.
You must not shrink. You are nearest and dearest, and all the world to me. Our souls are knit into one for all life and all time. Think, dear, that there have been times when brave men have killed their wives and their womankind to keep them from falling into the hands of the enemy. Their hands did not falter any more than because of those they loved implored them to slay them. It is men's duty towards whom they love in such times of sore trial. And oh, my dear, if it be so that I must meet death at any hand, let it be the hand of he who loves me most. Dr. Van Helsing, I have not forgotten the mercy for poor Lucy's case to whom he loved.
She stopped with a flying blush and changed her face.
To him who had the best right to give her peace. If that time shall come again, I look to you to make it a happy memory of my husband's life, that it was his loving hand which set me free from the awful thrall upon me.
Again, I swear, came the professor's resonant voice. Mrs. Harker smiled, positively smiled, as with a sigh of relief she leaned back and said,
And now one word of warning, a warning which you must never forget this time. If it ever come, it may come quickly and unexpectedly, and in such case you must lose no time in using your opportunity. At such a time I might myself be, nay, if the time comes, shall be leagued with your enemy against you. One more request,
she said very solemnly as she said this.
It is not vital and necessary like the other, but I want you to do one thing for me, if you will.
We all acquiesced, but no one spoke. There was no need to speak.
I want you to read the burial service.
She was interrupted by a deep groan from her husband, taking her hand in his. He held it over his heart and continued,
You must read it over me some day. Whatever may be the issue of all the fearful state of things, it will be a sweet thought to some or all of us. You, my dearest, will, I hope, read it, for then it will be in your voice and in my memory forever, come what may.
But oh, my dear one, he pleaded, death is afar from you.
Nay,
she said, holding up a warning hand.
I am deeper in death at this moment than if the weight of an earthly grave lay upon me.
Oh, my wife, must I read it? He said before he began.
It would comfort me, my husband,
Was all she said, and he began to read when she had got the book ready. How could anyone tell of that strange scene? That solemnity, its gloom, its sadness, its horror, and with all its sweetness. Even a skeptic, who can see nothing but travesty of bitter truth in anything holy or emotional, would have been melted to the heart had he seen that little group of loving and devoted friends kneeling around that stricken and sorrowing lady, or heard the tender passion of her husband's voice, and in tones so broken with emotion that often he had to pause. He read the simple and beautiful service for the burial of the dead. I cannot go on, words and voice fail me. She was right in her instinct, strange as it all was. Bizarre as it may be hereafter seem, even to us who felt its potent influence at the time, it comforted us much, and the silence, which showed Mrs. Harker's coming relapse from her freedom and soul, did not seem so full of despair to any of us as we had dreaded. Jonathan Harker's Journal, 15th October, Varna. We had left Charing Cross on the morning of the 12th, got to Paris the same night, and we took the places secured for us in the Orient Express. We traveled night and day, arriving here at about 5 o'clock, where Godalmering went to the consulate to see if any telegram had arrived for him, whilst the rest of us came to this hotel, the Odysseus. The journey may have had incidents. I was, however, too eager to get on to care for them. Until the Tsarina Catherine comes to port, there will be no interest for me in anything in the wide world. Thank God, Mina is well and looks to be getting stronger. Her color is coming back. She sleeps a great deal. Throughout the journey, she slept nearly all the time. Before sunrise and sunset, however, she is very wakeful and alert, and it has become a habit for Van Helsing to hypnotize her at such times. At first, some effort was needed, and he had to take many passes. But now she seems to yield at once, as if by habit, and scarcely any action is needed. He comes to have power at these particular moments of simply will, and her thoughts obey him. He always asks her what she can see and hear. She answers to the first,
nothing, all is dark.
and to the second,
I can hear waves lapping against the ship, and the water rushing by. Canvas and cordage strain as masts and yards creak. The wind is high. I can hear it in the shrouds, and the bow throws back the foam.
it is evident that the Tsarina Catherine is still at sea, hastening on her way to Varna. Lord Godalmering has just returned. He had 4 telegrams, one each day since we started, and all to the same effect, that the Tsarina Catherine has not yet reported to Lloyd's from anywhere. He had arranged before leaving London that his agent should send him every day a telegram saying if the ship had been reported. He was to have a message even if she were not reported, so that he might be sure that there was a watch being kept on the other end of the wire. We had dinner, and we went to bed early. Tomorrow we are to see the Vice-Consul and to arrange, if we can, about getting on board the ship as soon as it arrives. Van Helsing says that our chance will be to get on board between sunrise and sunset. The Count, even if he takes the form of a bat, cannot cross the running water of his own volition, and so cannot leave the ship. As he dare not change into the man's form without suspicion, which he evidently wishes to avoid, he must remain in the box. If, then, we can come aboard after sunrise, he's at our mercy, for we can open the box and make sure of him as we did poor Lucy before he wakes. What mercy he will get from us will not count for much. We think that we shall not have much trouble with the officials or the seamen. Thank God. This is the country where bribery can do anything, and we are well supplied with money. We only have to make sure that the ship cannot come into port between sunset and sunrise without our being warned, and we shall be safe. Judge Moneybag will settle this case, I think. 16th October. Mina's report still the same, lapping waves and rushing water, and darkness and favoring winds. We are evidently in good time, and when we hear of the Tsarina Catherine, we shall be ready. As she must pass the Dardanelles, we are sure to have some reports. 17th October. Everything is pretty well fixed now. I think to welcome the Count on his return from his tour. Godalming told the shippers that we fancied that the box sent aboard might contain something stolen from a friend of his, and got half consent that he might open it at his own risk. The owner gave him a paper telling the captain to give him every facility in doing whatever he chose on board the ship, and also a similar authorization to his agent in Varna. We have seen the agent, who was much impressed by Godalming's kindly manner to him, and we are all satisfied that whatever he can do to aid our wishes will be done. We have already arranged what to do in case we get the box opened. If the Count is there, Van Helsing and Seward will cut off his head at once and drive a stake through his heart. Morris and Godalming and I shall prevent interference, even if we have to use the arms at which we shall have ready. The professor says that if we can so treat the Count's body, it will soon fall after into dust. In such case, there would be no evidence against us, and in case any suspicion of murder were aroused. But even if it did not, we should stand or fall by our act, and perhaps some day this very script may be evidence to come between some of us and a rope. For myself, I should take the chance only too thankfully if it were to come. We mean to leave no stone unturned to carry out our intent. We have arranged with certain officials that the instant the Tsarina Catherine is seen, we are to be informed by a special messenger. 24th October. A whole week of waiting. Daily telegrams to Godalming, but only the same story. Not yet reported. Mina's hypnotic answer unvaried. Lapping waves, rushing water, and creaking masts. Telegram. Rufus Smith, Lloyd's, London, to Lord Godalming. Care of HBM, Vice Consul, Varna. October 24th. Tsarina Catherine reported this morning in Dardanelles. Dr. Seward's diary. 24th October. Oh, how I miss my phonograph. To write diary with his pen is irksome to me, but Van Helsing says I must. We were all wild with excitement today when Godalming got his telegram from Lloyd's. I now know that what men feel like in battle when the call to action is heard. Mrs. Harker, alone of our party, did not show any signs of emotion. After all, it is not strange that she did not, for we took special care not to let her know anything about it. And we all tried not to show any excitement when we were in her presence. In old days she would, I am sure, would have noticed, but no matter how we might have tried to conceal it. But in this way she has greatly changed during the past weeks. Lethargy grows upon her, and though she seems strong and well, and is getting back some of her color, Van Helsing and I are not satisfied. We talk of her often. We have not, however, said a word to the others. It would break poor Harker's heart, certainly his nerve, if he knew that we had even suspicion on the subject. Van Helsing examines, he tells me, her teeth very carefully, while she is in the hypnotic condition, for he says that so long as they do not begin to sharpen, there is no active danger of a change in her. If this change should come, it would be necessary to take steps. We both know what those steps would have to be, though we do not mention our thoughts to each other. We should neither of us shrink from the task, awful though it is to contemplate. Euthanasia is an excellent and comforting word. I am grateful to whoever invented it. It is only 24-hour sail from the Dardanelles to here, at the rate Tsarina Catherine has come from London. She should therefore arrive some time in the morning, but as we cannot possibly get in before then, we are all about to retire early. We shall get up at 1 o'clock, so as to be ready. 25th October, noon. No news yet of the ship's arrival. Mrs. Harker's hypnotic report this morning was the same as usual, so it was possible that we may not get any news at any moment. We men are all in a fever for excitement, except Harker, who is calm. His hands are as cold as ice, and an hour ago I found him whetting the edge of a great Gornton knife, which he now always carries with him. It will be a bad lookout for the Count if the edge of the Kikori ever touches his throat, driven by that stern, ice-cold hand. Van Helsing and I were a little alarmed about Mrs. Harker today. About noon she got into a sort of lethargy which we did not like, although we kept silence to the others. We were neither of us happy about it. She had been restless all the morning, so that we were at first glad to know that she was sleeping. When, however, her husband mentioned casually that she was sleeping so soundly that he could not wake her, we went to her room to see for ourselves. She was breathing naturally, and looked so well and peaceful that we agreed that sleep was better for her than anything else. Poor girl, she has so much to forget that it is no wonder to sleep. If it brings oblivion to her, it does her good. Later, our opinion was justified. After a refreshing sleep of some hours, she woke up. She seemed brighter and better than she has been for several days. At sunset, she made the typical hypnotic report. However, he may be in the Black Sea, for the Count is hurrying to his destination, to his doom, I trust. October 26th. Another day, and no tidings of the Tsarina Catherine. She ought to be here by now. That she is still journeying somewhere is apparent, for Mrs. Harker's hypnotic report at sunrise was still the same. It is possible that the vessel may be lying at times, or by fog. Some of the streamers which came in the evening reported patches of fog both to the north and to the south of the port. We must continue our watching, as the ship may now be signaled any moment. 27th October, noon. Most strange. No news yet of the ship. We wait for it. Mrs. Harker reported last night, and this morning as well, lapping waves and rushing water, though she added that the waves were very faint. The telegrams from London have been the same. No further reports. Van Helsing is terribly anxious, and told me just now that he fears the Count is escaping us, he added significantly. I do not like the lethargy in Madame Mina's. Souls and memories can do strange things during a trance. I was about to ask him more, but Harker just then came in and held up a warning hand. We must try tonight at sunset to make her speak more fully when in her hypnotic state. Telegram, Rufus Smith, London, to Lord Godalming, care of HBM, Vice-Consul Varna. The Tsarina Catherine reported entering Galatz at 1 o'clock today. Dr. Seward's diary. 28th October. When the telegram came announcing the arrival in Glatz, I did not think that it was such a shock to any of us might have been expecting. True, we did not know whence or how or when the bolt would come, but I think that we all expected that something strange would happen. The delay of the arrival of Varna made us individually satisfied that things would not be just as expected. We only waited to learn where the change would occur. None the less, however, was it a surprise. I suppose that nature works on such hopeful basis that we believe against ourselves that things will be as they ought to be, not as we should know that they will be. Transcendentalism is a beacon to the angels, and even a will-o-wisp to a man. It was an odd experience, and we all took it differently. Van Helsing raised his hands over his head for a moment, as though the remonstrance with the Almighty. But he said not a word, and in a few seconds stood up with his face sternly set. Lord Godalming grew very pale, and sat breathing heavily. I was myself half stunned, and looked at one another. Quincy Morris tightened his belt with that quick movement which I knew too well. In all our old wandering days, it meant action. Mrs. Harker grew ghastly white, so that the scar on her forehead seemed to burn. But she folded her hands meekly and looked up in prayer. Harker smiled, actually smiled. A dark, bitter smile of one who is without hope. But at the same time his action belied his words, for his hands instinctively sought the hilt of the great Kazurki knife rested there. "When does the next train start for Galatz?" said Van Helsing to us generally. "At 6:30 tomorrow morning." We all stared, for the answer came from Mrs. Harker. "How on earth do you know?" asked Art. "You forget, or perhaps you did not know, though Jonathan does, and does Dr. Van Helsing, that I am a train fiend. At home in Exeter I always used to make up my own timetables, so as to be helpful to my husband. I found it so useful sometimes that I always make a study of the timetables now. I knew that if anything were to take us to Castle Dracula, he should go by Galatz, or by any rate through Bucharest, so I learned the tables very carefully. Unhappily, there are not many to learn, as the only train tomorrow leaves, as I say." "Wonderful woman," murmured the professor. "Can't we even get a special?" asked Lord Godalming. Van Helsing shook his head. "I fear not. This is very different from yours and mine. Even if we did have a special, it would probably not arrive as soon as our regular train. Moreover, we have something to prepare. We must think. Now let us organize. Your friend, Arthur, go to the train and get the tickets and arrange that all will be ready for us to go in the morning. Do you, friend Jonathan, go to the agent of the ship and got the letters from him to the agent of Gallants, with the authority to make search of the ship as soon as it were here. Quincy Morris, you see to the vice-consul, and get his aid with the fellow in Gallants, and all he can do to make our way smooth, so that no times be lost when we over the Danube. John will stay with Madam Mina and me, and we shall consult. If so, for a long time you may be delayed, and it will not matter when the sun sets, since I am here with Madam to make report." "I am," said Mrs. Harker brightly, and more like her old self than she had been for many long day. "Shall try to be of use in the old ways, and shall think and write for you as I used to do. Something is shifting from me in some strange way, and I feel freer than I have been of late." The three younger men looked happier at the moment, as they seemed to realize the significance of her words. But Van Helsing and I, turning to each other, met each a grave and troubled glance. We said nothing at the time. When the three men had gone to do their tests, Van Helsing asked Mrs. Harker to look up the copy of the diaries and find him the part where Harker's journal at the castle. She went away to get it, and when the door was shut upon her, he said to me, We must speak the same. Speak out. There is some change. It is a hope that makes me sick, if it may deceive us.
Quite so. Do you know why I asked her to get the manuscript?
No, I said, unless it was to get an opportunity of seeing me alone.
You are quite right, friend John, but only in part. I want to tell you something. Oh, friend, I'm a great, terrible risk, but believe it is right. In the moment when Madame said those words that arrest both our understanding, an inspiration came to me. In the trance of 3 days ago, the Count sent her his spirit to read her mind. Or more like, he took her to see him in his earth box, in the ship with water rushing, just as it go free to rise and set its sun. He learned that we are here, for she have tell him more one open life with eyes and ears to hear than he shut as he is in his coffin box. Now he make his most efforts to escape us. At present he wants her not. He is sure with his so great a knowledge that she will come at his call, but he cut her off. Take her, as he can do, out of his power, that so she come not to him. Ah, there I have hope that our main brains that have been of man so long have not lost the grace of God, will come higher than his child brain that lie in his tomb for centuries, that grow not yet to our stature, and that do only work selfish and therefore small. He comes, Madamina. Not a word to her of her trance. She know it not, and it would overwhelm her and make despair just when she all want of hope, all her courage, when most we want all of her great brain, which is trained like man's brain, but is of sweet woman, and of a special power which the Count give her, and which he may not take away altogether, though he think not so. Hush, let us speak, and you shall learn. Oh, John, my friend, we are in awful straits. I fear, as I never feared before, we can only trust the good God. Silence, here she comes.
I thought that the professor was going to break down and have hysterics, just as he had when Lucy died. But with a great effort he controlled himself and was perfect nervous poise when Mrs. Harker tripped into the room, bright and happy looking and the doing of work, seemingly forgetful of her misery. As she came in, she handed a number of sheets of typewriting to Dr. Van Helsing. He looked them over gravely. His face brightened up as he read. And then, holding the page between his fingers and thumb, he said,
Friend John, to you with much experience already, and you, dear Madamina, that are young, here is a lesson. Do not fear ever to think. Half-thought has been buzzing often in my brain, but I fear to let him loose his wings. Here now, with more knowledge, I go back to where that half-thought come from, and I find that he be no half-thought at all, that he be a whole thought, though so young that he is not yet strong enough to use his little wings. Nay, like Ugly Duck of my friend Hans Christian, he be no duck thoughts at all, but a big swan thoughts that sail nobly on big wings when the time come for him to try them. See, I read here what Jonathan have written, that others of his race who, in a large age, again and again brought his forces over the great river into Turkeyland, who, when he was beaten back, came again and again and again, though he had to come alone from the bloody field where his troops were being slaughtered, since he knew that he alone could ultimately triumph. What does this tell us? Not much? No. The Count's child thoughts see nothing, therefore he speak to free. Your man thoughts see nothing, my man thoughts see nothing, till just now. No. But there comes another word from someone who speak without thought because she knew too not what they meant, what it might mean. Just as there are elements which rest, yet when in nature's course they move on their way, and they touch, then poof! And there comes a flash of light, heavens wide, that bright and kill and destroy some, but that show up all earth below the leagues of leagues. Is it not so? Well, I shall explain. To begin, have you ever studied the philosophy of crime? Yes and no. You, John, yes, for it is a study of insanity. You, no, Mina, for crime touch you not. Not but once. Still, your mind works true, and argues not particularly ad universale. There is this peculiarity in criminals. It is not so constant in all countries and at all times that even police, who know not much from philosophy, come to know it emphatically. That it is. That is to be empiric. The criminal always work at one crime. That is the true crime, who seem predestinate to crime, and who will of none other. This criminal has not a full man-brain. He is clever and cunning and resourceful, but he be not of man's stature as to brain. He be of child-brain in much. Now this criminal of ours is predestinate to crime also. He too have a child-brain, and it is of the child to do what he have done. The little bird, the little fish, little animal learn not by principle, but empirically. And when he learn to do, then there is to him the ground to start from to do more. Dos por sto, said Archimedes. Give me a fulcrum, and I shall move the world. To do once is the fulcrum hereby the child-brain become man-brain, and until he have the purpose to do more, he continue to do the same every time, just as he have done before. Oh, my dear, I see that your eyes are opened, and that you do not see the lightning flash show all your leagues, for Miss Harker began to clap her hands, and her eyes sparkled. And he went on. Now you shall speak. Tell us two dry men of science what you see with those so bright eyes.
He took her hand and held it while she spoke. His finger and thumb closed on her pulse, and I thought instinctively and unconsciously as she spoke.
The Count is a criminal, and of the criminal type. Nordio and Lombroso would so classify him, and quo criminal he has imperatively formed mind. Thus, in a difficulty he has to see resources and habits. This passes a clue, and the one page of it that we know, and that's from his own lips, tells it once before when it is Mr. Morse should call a tight place. He went back to his own country from the land he tried to invade, and thence, without losing purpose, preparing himself for a new effort, he came again, better equipped for his work, and won. So he came to London to invade a new land. He was beaten, and when all hope of success was lost, and his existence was danger, he fled back over the sea to his home, just as formerly as he had done over the Danube from Turkeyland.
Good, you are a clever lady, said Van Helsing enthusiastically, as he stooped and kissed her hand. A moment later he said to me, as calmly as though we had just had been having a sick-room consultation,
72 only, and in all this excitement I have hope.
Turning to her again, he said with keen expectation,
But go on, there is more to tell if you will. Be not afraid, John, and I know. I do in any case, and shall tell you if you are right. Speak without fear. I will try to, but you will forgive me if I seem egotistical.
Nay, fear not. You must be an egotist, for it is of you that we think.
Then, as he is a criminal, he is selfish, and his intellect is small, and his actions are based on selfishness. He confines himself to one purpose. That purpose is remorseless. As he fled back over the Danube, leaving his forces to be cut to pieces, he is now intent on being safe, careless of all. So his own selfishness frees my soul somewhat of the terrible power over which he acquired on me of the dreadful night. I felt it. Oh, I felt it. Thank God for his great mercy. My soul was freer than it has been since that awful hour, and all that haunts me is fear lest in some trance or dream he may have used my knowledge for his ends.
The professor stood up.
He has so used your mind, and by it he has left us here in Varna, whilst the ship that carried him rushed the enveloping fog to Galatz, where doubtless he has made preparation for escaping from us. But his child mind only saw so far, and it may be that, as ever in God's providence, the very thing that the evildoer most reckoned on for his selfish good turns out to be his chiefest harm. The hunter taken back by his own snare, as the great psalmist says. For now that he is free from every trace of all of us, and that he has escaped us with so many hours to him, then his selfish child brain will whisper him to sleep. You think, too, that he has cut himself off, knowing your mind. There can be no knowledge of him to you, and there is he will fail. That terrible baptism of blood which he gave you makes you free to go to him in spirit, and you have as yet done your times of freedom. When the sun rise and set, at such times you go by the violation and not by his, and this power to good of you and others you have won from your suffering at his hands. This is now all more precious that he knows it not, and to guard himself have even cut himself off from his knowledge of where we are. We, however, are not at all selfish, and we believe that God is through us, and all his blackness, there are dark hours. We shall follow him, and we shall not flinch, even in the peril ourselves that we become like him. Friend John, this has been a great hour, and I have done much to advance us on our way. You must scribe and write all down, so that when the others return from their work, you can give it to them. Then they shall know as we do.
And so I have written it whilst we wait their return, and Miss Harker has written with her typewriter all since she brought the MS to us. Chapter 26. Dr. Seward's Diary. 29th October. This is written in the train from Varna to Galatz. Last night we all assembled a little before the time of sunset. Each of us had done his work well as we could, so far as thought and endeavor and opportunity go. We are prepared for the whole of our journey, and for our work when we get to Galatz. When the usual time came around, Miss Harker prepared herself for her hypnotic effort, and after a longer and more strenuous effort on the part of Dr. Van Helsing than had been usually necessary, she sank into a trance. Usually she speaks on a hint, but this time the professor had to ask her questions, and to ask them pretty resolutely before we could learn anything. At last her answer came.
I can see nothing. We are still. There are no waves lapping, but only a steady swirl of water softly running against the hawser. I can hear men's voices calling, near and far, and the roll and creak of oars in the rowlocks. A gun is fired somewhere. The echo of it seems far away. There is tramping of feet overhead, and ropes and chains are dragged along. What is this? There's a gleam of light. You can feel the air blowing upon me.
Here she stopped. She had risen, and, as if impulsively, from where she lay on the sofa, raised both her hands, palms upwards, as if lifting a weight. Van Helsing and I looked at each other with understanding. Quincy raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at her intently, whilst Harker's hand instinctively closed around the hilt of his kabuki. There was a long pause. We all knew that the time when she could speak was passing. But we felt that it was useless to say anything. Suddenly she sat up, and, as she opened her eyes, said sweetly,
"Would none of you like a cup of tea? You must all be very tired."
We got up only to make her happy, and so acquiesced. She bustled off to get tea. When she had gone, Van Helsing said,
You see, my friends, he is close to land, and he has left his earth chest. But he has yet to get on shore. In the night he may lie hidden somewhere, but if he not be carried on shore, or if the ship do not touch it, he cannot achieve the land. In such a case he can, if it be in the night, change his form, and can jump or fly on shore, as he did in Whitby. But if the day come before he can get on shore, unless he be carried and cannot escape, and if he be carried, then the customs men may discover what the box contains. Thus, in fine, he cannot escape night on shore tonight, or before dawn, and there will be a whole day lost to him. He may then arrive on time. If he not escape at night, we shall come to him in daytime, boxed up and at our mercy. For he dare not be his true self awake and visible, lest he be discovered."
There was no more to be said, so we waited in patience until the dawn, at which time we might learn more from Mrs. Harker. Early this morning we listened with breathless anxiety for her response in the trance. The hypnotic sage was even longer in coming than before. When it came, the time remaining until full sunrise was so short that we began to despair. Van Helsing seemed to throw his whole soul into the effort. At last, in obedience to his will, she made a reply.
"It is dark. I hear water lapping, level with me, and some creaking of wood on wood."
She paused, and the red sun shot up. We must wait till tonight. And so it is that we are traveling towards Galatz in the agony of expectation. We are due to arrive between 2 and 3 in the morning, but already in Bucharest we are 3 hours late, so we cannot possibly get in till well after sunup. Thus we shall have 2 more hypnotic messages from Mrs. Harker. Either or both may possibly throw more light on what is happening. Later. Sunset has come and gone. Fortunately, it came at a time when there was no distraction, for had it occurred whilst we were at a station, we might not have secured the necessary calm and isolation. Mrs. Harker yielded to the hypnotic influence even less readily than this morning. I am in fear that her power of reading the Count's sensations may die away, just when we want it most. It seems to me that her imagination is beginning to work. While she has been in the trance hitherto, she has confirmed herself to simplest facts. It goes on, it may ultimately mislead us. If I thought that the Count's power over her would simply die away equally with her power of knowledge, it would be a happy thought. But I am afraid that it may not be so. When she did speak, her words were enigmatical.
"Something is going out. I can feel it past me like a cold wind. I can hear, far off, confused sounds of men walking and talking in strange tongues. Fierce falling of water, and the howling of wolves."
She stopped, and a shudder ran through her, increasing in intensity with a few short seconds, till at the end she shook as though in a palsy. She said no more, even in answer to the professor's imperative questioning. When she woke from her trance, she was cold and exhausted and languid. But her mind was all alert. She could not remember anything, but asked what she had said. When she was told, she pondered over it deeply and a long time, and in silence. 30th October, 7 a.m. We are near Galatz now, and I may not have time to write later. Sunrise this morning was anxiously looked at by all. Knowing of the increasing difficulty of procuring the hypnotic trance, Van Helsing began his passes earlier than usual. They produced no effect, however, until the regular time, which he yielded with a small, greater difficulty, only a minute before the sun rose. The professor lost no time in his questioning. Her answer came with equal quickness. All is dark. I hear the waters rolling by, level with my ears, and the creaking of wood on wood. Cattle low far on. There's another sound, crow-like. She stopped and grew white, and whiter still.
Go on, speak, I command you,
said Van Helsing in an agonized voice. At the same time there was a despair in his eyes, for the risen sun was reddening even Miss Harker's pale face. She opened her eyes, and we all started as she said, sweetly and seemingly with the utmost concern.
Oh, Professor, why ask me to do what you know I can't? I don't remember anything.
Then, seeing the look of amazement on our faces, she said, turning from one to another,
What have I said? What have I done? I know nothing, only that I was lying here, half asleep. I heard you say, Go on, speak, I command you. It seemed so funny to hear you order me about like that, as if it were some kind of bad child.
Oh, Madam Mina, he said softly.
It is proof, if proof be needed, of how I love and honor you, when a word from your good spoken word, more earnestly than ever, can seem so strange. Because it is to order of whom I am proud to obey.
The whistle was resounding. We're nearing Galatz. We are on fire with anxiety and eagerness. Mina Harker's Journal, 30th October.
Mr. Morris took me to the hotel where our rooms had been ordered by telegraph, he being the one who could best be spared, since he does not speak the foreign language. The forces were disturbed much as they had been at Varna, except that Lord Godalming went in the vice-consul, as his rank might serve as an immediate guarantee of some sort to the official, being of extreme hurry. Jonathan and the two doctors went to the shipping agent to learn particulars of the arrival of the Tsarina Catherine.
Later,
Lord Godalming has returned. The consul was away, and the vice-consul sick, so the routine work has been attended by a clerk. He was very obliging and offered to do anything in his power.
Jonathan Harker's Journal, 30th October. At 9 o'clock, Dr. Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, and I called on the masters Mackenzie and Steinkopf, the agents of the London firm of Hapgood. They had received a wire from London, in answer to Lord Godalming's telegraphed request, asking them to show us any civility in their power. They were more than kind and courteous, and took us on board the Tsarina Catherine, which lay at anchor out to the river harbor. There we saw the captain, Donaldson by name, who told us of his voyage. He said that in all his life he had never had so favorable a run. "Man," he said, "but it made us afeard, for we were expected to be some kind of hazard pay for it, with a rare piece of old luck, as soon as keep up the beverage, and I ain't no canny. To fare a run into the Black Sea with a wind shint, ain't the devil himself be bawling her sail at to send purpose, and at the time we could answer no spare thing. Gin, we were nigh a ship, a port and headlong. Fog fell on us and travelled us after the lifted it, and we looked and the devil thing could see. We ran on Gibraltar and went around and took a signal until we came to the Dardanelles, and we had to wait to get our permit to pass. We never were within hail of night. At first I inclined to slack off sail and beat about till the fog was lifted, but whiles I thought that the devil was minded to get us into the Black Sea quick. He was like to do it whether we would or no.
If we had a quick voyage, it would be more of a miscredit for our owners, the hurt that our traffic in the old mountain, who had served his aim purpose and were discreetly grateful to us for no hindering him. This mixture of simplicity and cunning, of superstition and commercial reasoning, roused Van Helsing, who said, "My friend, the devil is more clever than he is thought by some, and he know when he meet his match." The skipper was not displeased by the compliment, and went on. When we got past the before us, the men began to grumble, something about the Romanians, and came and asked about us overboard a big box which had been laid put in the queer-looking old man just before we had started from London. I'd seen the spirit the fellow and put it out to fingers when they saw him, and guard against the evil eye. Man, but the superstition of foreigners is perfectly ridiculous. I sent them about their business pretty quick, but just as after the fog closed on us, I felt a wee bit as they did want. Something, although I couldn't say what was again, the big box. Well, we went on, and as the fog didn't let us up for 5 days, we just let the wind carry us, for it was the devil wanted to get us somewhere. Well, we would fetch up the reef, and it didn't, well, we'd keep a sharp lookout anyhow. Sure enough, we had a fair way to deep water at the time, and 2 days ago, when the morning sun came through the fog, we found ourselves just in the river opposite Gallan's. The Romanians were wild, wanting me right and wrong to take out the box and fling it in the river. We had an argument with them about the handspike, and when Lester turned off the deck, with his head raised his hand, I convinced them, evil eye, no evil eye, the property and the trust of my owners were better than my hands in the river Danube. They had, mind you, taken the box to the deck already to fling it, as it was marked Gallant's Via Varna. I thought I'd let it be till the discharge of the port to get 'em all right together. We didn't do much clearing that day, and had to remain at night in the Acre. But in the morning, ball and early, hour of the sun up, the man came aboard with an order, written to him from England, to receive the box marked for one Count Dracula. Sure enough, the matter was one ready in his hand. He had the right papers and written right. I was glad to be rid of the damn thing, for I was beginning myself to feel uneasy at it. If the devil did have any luggage aboard the ship, I'm thinking it'd be none thither than the same.
What was the name of the man who took it?
Asked Dr. Van Helsing, with restrained eagerness. "I be telling you quick," he answered, and stepped down to his comb, produced the receipts, signed Emmanuel Heiderschlein. February 16th was the address. We found out that this was all the captain knew, so with thanks we came away. We found Heiderschlein in his office, a Hebrew of rather Eldofi type, with a nose like a sheep, and a fez. His arguments were pointed and specie, doing with the punctuation, and with a little bargaining he told us what he knew. This turned out to be simple but important. He had received a letter from Mr. Deville of London, telling him to receive, if possible before sunrise, as to avoid customs, a box which would arrive at Galatz in the Tsarina Catherine. This he was to give charge of to Petrov Skinsky, who dealt with the Slovaks who traded down the river to the port. He had been paid for his work by an English banknote, which had been duly cashed for gold at the Danube International Bank. When Skinsky had come to him, he had taken him to the ship and handed over the box to save portage. That was all he knew. When we sought for Skinsky, but were unable to find him, one of his neighbors, who did not seem to bear him any affection, said that he had gone away 2 days before, and no one knew where. This was corroborated by his landlord, who had received the messenger the key of the house together with rent due in English money. This he had been between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. We were at a standstill again. Whilst we were talking, one came running and breathlessly gasped that the body of Skinsky had been found inside the wall of the churchyard at St. Peter, and that the throat had been torn open as if by some wild animal. Those we had been speaking with ran off to see the horror, the women crying out, "This is the work of a Slovak!" We hurried away, lest we should be known in some way drawn to the affair, and so detained. As we came home, we arrived with no definite conclusion. We were all convinced that the box was on its way, by water, to somewhere. But where that night and be, we have yet to discover. With heavy hearts, we came home to the hotel, to Mina. When we met together, the first thing was to consult as to taking Mina again in our confidence. Things are getting desperate, and it was at least a chance, though a hazardous one. As a preliminary step, I was released from my promise to her. Mina Harker's Journal, 30th October, evening. They were so tired and worn out, dispirited, that there was nothing to be done till they had some rest. So I asked them to all lie down for half an hour whilst I should enter everything in the moment. I felt so grateful to the man who invented the traveler's typewriter, and to Mr. Morris for getting me one. I should have felt quite astray doing the work if I had to write pen to paper. It is all done. Poor dear, dear Jonathan. What he must have suffered, what he must be suffering now. He lies on the sofa, hardly seeming to breathe. His whole body appears to collapse. His brows are knit, his face is drawn with pain. Poor fellow, he is thinking. I can see it in his face, all wrinkled up with the concentration of his thoughts. Oh, if I can only help at all, I shall do what I can. I asked Dr. Van Helsing, and he has got me the papers that I need, that I have not seen yet. Whilst they are resting, I shall go over them carefully. Perhaps I may arrive at some conclusion. I shall try to follow the professor's example, and think without prejudice on the facts before me. I do believe that under God's providence I have made a discovery. I shall get the maps and look over them. I am more than ever sure that I am right. My new conclusion is ready, and I shall get our party together and read it. They can judge it. It may as well be accurate, and every minute is precious. Mina Harker's memorandum, entered in her journal. Ground of inquiry. Count Dracula's problem is to get back to his own place. Eh? He must be brought back by someone. This is evident, for had he the power to move himself as he wished, he would go either as man or wolf or bat or in some other way. He evidently fears discovery or interference in the state of helplessness in which he must be, confined as he is between dawn and sunset in a wooden box. B. How is he to be taken? Here is a process of elimination may help us, by road, by rail, or by water. 1. By road. There are endless difficulties, especially in leaving a city. A. There are people, and people are curious and investigate. A hint, a surmise, a doubt to what might be in the box could destroy him. B. There are, or there might be, customs and octroi officers to pass. C. His pursuers might follow. This is his greatest fear, and in order to prevent his being betrayed by this, has repelled, as far as he can tell, his victim, me. 2. By rail. There is no one in charge of the box. It would have to be taking his chances of being delayed, and delay would be fatal. His enemies on the track. True, he might escape by night, but where would he be, if he left some strange place with no refuge that he could fly to? This is not what he intends, and what he does not mean to risk it. 3. By water. Here is the safest way in one respect, but with most danger in another. On water he is powerless except at night. Even then he can only summon fog and storm and snow and the wolves. But where he wrecked, the living water would engulf him. Helpless, he would indeed be lost. He would have the vessel drive to land, but if it were on friendly land, wherein he could not move, his position would still be desperate. We know from the record that he was on water, so what we have to do is ascertain what water. First thing is to realize exactly what he has done as yet. We may, then, get a light on what his later task to be. Firstly, we must consider what he did in London as part of his general plan of action. When he was pressured for moments, he had to arrange as many best as he could. Secondly, we must see, as well as we can surmise it from the facts that we know of, what he has done here. As to the first, he evidently intended to arrive at Galatz, and was sent an envoy to Verna to deceive us lest we should ascertain his means of exit from England. His immediate and sole purpose was then to escape. The proof of this letter of instructions to Manuel Henversand to clear and to take away the box before sunrise. There is also the instruction of Petrov Skinsky. This we must only guess at, but there must have been some letter or message since Skinsky came to Heidersheim. That, so far, his plans were successful, we know. The Tsarina Catherine made a phenomenal quick journey, so much that the Captain Donelson's suspicions were aroused. But his suspicion, united with his canniness, played his Count's game for him. And when he ran his favourite wind through fogs, and all till he's brought up the blindfolded Galatz, that the Count's arrangements were well made, he has been proved. Henderson cleared the box and took it off and gave it to Skinsky. Skinsky took it, and here we lose the trail. We only know that the box was somewhere on the water moving along. The customs and the octroi, if there be any, have been avoided. The box was given to Skinsky before sunrise. At sunrise the Count would appear in his own form. Here we ask why Skinsky has chosen all to aid in the work. In my husband's diary, Skinsky is mentioned as dealing with the Slovaks who trade downriver of the port. And the man's remark that the murder was the work of Slovak showed the general feeling against his class. The Count wanted isolation. My surmise is this. At the London court, he decided to go back to Castle by water, as the most safe and secret way. He was bought by Castle by Slancy, and probably they delivered their cargo to Slovaks, who took the boxes to Varna. From there they were shipped to London. Thus the Count had knowledge of the persons who would arrange his service. With the boxes on land, before sunrise and after sunset, he came out of the box, met Skinsky, and instructed him what's to be done to arrange the carriaging of the box up some river. When this was done, he knew all that was in the train, and blotted out his traces, as he thought, by murdering his agent. I have examined the map, and find that the river most suitable for the Slovaks to ascend is the Perth or the Cedars. I read in the typescript that in my trance I heard cows low and water swirling level at my ears, and the creaking of wood. The Count, in his box, then, was on the river in a boat propelled probably either by oars or poles, for the banks were near and it was working against stream. There would be no such sound of floating downstream. Of course, it may be either the strength or the Pruth, but he may possibly investigate further. Now, of these two, the Pruth is more easily navigated, but the Sereth is, at Fundu, joined by the Blitzera, which runs up around Borgo Pass. The loop it makes manifestly close to Kila's castle as he can get by water. Mina Harker's journal continued. When I had done reading, Jonathan took me up in his arms and kissed me. The others kept shaking me by both hands, and Dr. Van Helsing said, "Our dear Madam Mina is once more our teacher. Her eyes have seen where we were blinded. Now we are on the track once again, and this time we may succeed. Our enemy is in his most helpless, and if we can come by him by day, on the water, our task will be over. He has a start, but he is powerless to hasten, and he may not leave his box lest those who carry him may suspect. For them to suspect would be to prompt them to throw him in the stream, where he perish. This he knows, and will not. Now, men, to our council of war, for here now we must plan what each and all shall do.
I shall get a steam launch and follow him, said Montgomery. And I, horses to follow on the bank, lest we chance by land, said Mr. Morse.
Good, said the professor. Both good. Neither must be go alone. There must be force to overcome force if need be. The Slovak is strong and rough, and he rides crude arms.
All the men smiled, for amongst them they all carried a small arsenal, said Mr. Morse. I have brought some Winchesters. They're pretty handy in a crowd, and there may be wolves. If the Count, if you remember, took some other precautions, he made some requisitions on others Miss Harker could not quite hear and understand. We must be ready at all points. I think I'd better go with Quincy. We have been accustomed to hunt together, and if we two are well armed, we will be matched for whatever may come along. You must not be alone, Art. It may be necessary to fight the Slovaks and good thrust, for I don't suppose these fellows carry guns would undo all our plans. There must be no chances this time. We shall not rest until the Count's head and body have been separated, and we are sure that this cannot reincarnate. He looked at Jonathan as he spoke, and Jonathan looked at me. I could see that the poor dear was had to turn around in his mind. Of course, he wanted to be with me, but the boat service would, most likely, be the one which would destroy the vampire. Why did I hesitate to write that word? He was silent a while, and during his silence, Dr. Van Helsing spoke.
Friend Jonathan, this is to you for twice reasons. First, because you are young and brave and can fight, and all energies may be needed at the last. And again, that it might be your right to destroy him, that which has brought such woe on you and yours. Be not afraid for Madam Mina. She will be in my care. If I may, I am old. My legs are not so quick as to run at once, and I am not used to ride so long as to pursue as may need be, or to fight with lethal weapon. But I can be of some other service. I can fight in other way, and if I can die, if need be, as well as younger men. Now let me say that I would this. While you, Lord Godalming, and friend Jonathan go in your swift little steam boat up the river, and whilst Jonathan and Quincy guard the bank where perchance he might be landed, I will take Madam Mina right into the heart of the enemy's country. Whilst the old fox is tied in his box, floating on running stream whence he cannot escape to land, where he dares not raise his lid of the coffin box, lest the Slovaks should fear leave him to perish, we shall go in the track where Jonathan went. From Birds over the Bongo, we will find our way to the castle of Dracula. Here, Madam Mina's hypnotic power will surely help, and we shall find our way, all dark and unknown otherwise, after the first sunrise when we are near the fateful place. There is much to be done, and other places to be made sanctify, so that when the nest of vipers be obliterated.
Here, Jonathan interrupted him rapidly. Do you mean to say, Professor Van Helsing, that you would bring Mina, in her sad case and as tainted as she is, into the devil's illness, right into the jaws of his death trap? Not for the world. Not for heaven or hell. He became almost speechless for a moment, then went on. Do you know what that place is? Have you seen the awful den of hellish infamy?
With that very moonlight alive with grisly shapes and every speck of dust that whirls in the wind a devouring monster in embryo? Have you felt the vampire's lips upon your throat? Here he turned to me, and his eyes lit on my forehead. He threw up his arms with a cry. Oh my God! What have we done to have this terror upon us? He sank down on the sofa in a relapse of misery. The professor's voice as clear as he spoke, sweet tones which seemed to vibrate in the air, calmed us all. Oh, my friend, it is because I would save Mantamina from all that awful place that I would go. God forbid that I should take her into that place. There is work, wild work, to be done there, that her eyes may not see. We men here, all save Jonathan, have seen with our own eyes what is to be done before that place can be purified. Remember that we are in terrible straits. If the Count escape us this time, and he is strong and subtle and cunning, he may choose to sleep him for a century, and then, in our time, dear one, he took my hand, would come to him and keep him company, and would be those others that you, Jonathan, saw. You have told us of their gloating lips. You heard their ribald laughter and their clutching of the moving bag that the Count threw to them. You shudder, and may it well be. Forgive me that place is such pain, but it is necessary. My friend, it is not a dire need for the which I am giving, if need be, my life. If it were that anyone went into this place to stay, it is I who would have to go, to keep them company.
Do as you will,
Said Jonathan, with a sob that shook him all over.
we are in the hands of God.
Later.
Oh, it did me good to see the way that all these brave men worked. How can women help loving men when they are so earnest and so true and so brave? And too, it made me think of the wonderful power of money. What can it not do when it is properly applied, and what it might do when basely used? I felt so thankful that Lord Godalming is rich, and that both he and Mr. Morris, who also had plenty of money, were willing to spend it so freely. For if they did not, our little expedition would not start, either so promptly or so well equipped, as it will within another hour. It is not 3 hours since it was arranged that each of us do our part. Now Lord Godalming and Jonathan have a lovely steam launch, with steam up and ready at the moment's notice. Dr. Seward and Mr. Morris have a dozen beautiful horses, well appointed. We all have maps and appliances of various kinds that can be had. Professor Van Helsing and I are to leave by 11:40 train tonight for Varennes, where we are to get a carriage to drive to the Borgo Pass. We are bringing a good deal of ready money, as we are to buy carriages and horses. We shall drive ourselves, for no one we can trust in the matter. The professor knows something of a great many languages, and so we shall be all right. We have got all arms, and even a large bore revolver. Jonathan would not be happy unless I was armed like the rest. Alas, I cannot carry one arm to do the rest, and the scar on my forehead bids it. Dear Dr. Van Helsing comforts me by telling me that I am fully armed, as there may be wolves. The weather is getting colder every hour, and there are snow flurries which come and go as warnings. Later. It took me all my courage to say goodbye to my darling. We may never meet again. Courage, Mina. The professor is looking at you keenly. Keep. His look is warning. We must be no tears now, unless it may be that God will let them fall on gladness.
Jonathan Harker's Journal, October 30th, night. I am writing this in the light of the furnace door of the steam launch. The Godalming is firing up. He is an experienced hand at the work, and he has had many years of launch of his own in the Thames. and another at Northfolk Roads. Regarding our plans, we finally decided that Mina guess was correct, and that if the waterway was chosen for the Count's escape back to the castle, the waterway, the 7th and the Breza was its junction would be the one. We took it that someone about 47th degree north latitude would be the place chosen for the crossing of the country between the river and the Carpathians. We have no fear in running at good speed up the river at night. There is plenty of water, and the banks are wide enough apart to make for steaming. Even in the dark, easy enough. The Goldring tells me to sleep for a while, and it is enough for present for one on its watch. But I cannot sleep. How can I, with the terrible danger hanging over my darling, and her going into that awful place? My only comfort is that she was in the hands of God, for only for that faith it would be easier to die than to live, and be so quit of all trouble. Mr. Morris and Dr. Stewart were off on the long ride before we started. They are to keep up with the right bank, far enough off to get to the higher lands, where they can keep a good stretch of the river and avoid the falling of the curves. They have, for the first stages, 2 men to ride the lead and the spare horse, 4 in all, so as to not excite curiosity. When they dismiss the men, which will be shortly, they will themselves look after the horses. It may be necessary for us to join forces, if they can mount their whole party. One of the saddles has a removable horn, which can be easily adapted for Mina, if required. It is a wild adventure we are on, here, as we are rushing along through the darkness, with the cold of the river seeming to rise up and strike us, with all the mysterious noises of the night. It comes home. We seem to be drifting into unknown places and unknown ways, into a whole world of dark and dreadful things. Golden Ring is shutting the furnace door. 31st October. Still hurrying along. The day has come and Golden Ring is sleeping. I am on watch. The morning is bitterly cold. The furnace heat is grateful, though we have heavy fur coats. As yet, we have passed only a few open boats, and none of them had on board any box or package of anything of any size of the one we seek. The men were scared every time we turned on our electric lamp on them, and fell to their knees and prayed. 1st November. No news all day. We have found nothing in the kind we seek. We have now passed into Bizitra, and if we are wrong in our surmise, our chance is gone. We have overhauled every boat, big and little. Early this morning, one crew took us for a government boat and treated us accordingly. We saw in this way of soothing matters, so at Fundu, when the Bertha turns into the 7th, we got a Romanian flag which we now fly conspicuously. With every boat which we have overhauled since this, the trick has succeeded. We have had every difference shown to us, and not once any objection to whatsoever we chose to ask. Some of the Slovaks tell us the big boat passed them, going at more than unusual speed, as we had double the crew on board. This was before they came to Fundu. They could not tell us whether the boat turned into Bitra or continued up the Strid. At Fundu, we could not hear of any such boat, so she must have passed there in the night. I'm suddenly feeling very sleepy. The cold is perhaps beginning to tell on me. The nature must have some rest time. Goldring insists that he shall keep the first watch. God bless him for all his goodness to poor Mina and me. 2nd November. Morning. It is broad daylight. The good fellow would not wake me. He says it would have been a sin to, for I slept so peacefully and forgetting all my trouble. It seems brutally selfish of me to have slept so long and let him watch all night. But he was quite right. I am a new man this morning, and as I sit here watching him sleep, I can do all that is necessary both in minding the engine, steering, and keeping watch. I can feel that my strength and energy are coming back. I wonder where Mina is now, and Van Helsing. They should have gotten to Vartsy about noon on Wednesday. It would take them some time to get the carriage and horses, so if they had started and traveled hard, they would be about at the Borgo Pass. God guide and help them. I'm afraid to think what might happen. If we could only go faster, but we cannot. The engines are throbbing and doing their utmost. I wonder how Dr. Seward and Mr. Morris are getting on. They seem to be the endless streams running down the mountains into this river, but none of them is large. At present, at all events, though they are terrible doubtless in winter, when the snow melts, the horsemen may not have met such obstruction. I hope that before they get to Strabsa, we may see them. For if by that time we have not overtaken the Count, it may be necessary to take some counsel together what to do next. Dr. Seward's Diary, 2nd November. 3 days on the road, no news, no time to write if there had been any, for every moment is precious. We have had only need restful for the horses, but we are both bearing it wonderfully. Those adventurous days of ours are turning up useful. We must push on. We'll never feel happy till we get to the lunch in sight again. 3rd November. We heard at Fundu that the lunch had gone up to Britza. I wish it wasn't so cold. There are signs of snow coming, and if it falls heavy, it will stop us. In such case, we must sledge on and go on, Russian fashion. 4th November. Today we heard the lunch having been detained by an accident when trying to force a way up one of the rapids. The Slovak boats get up all right, and by aid of rope and steering of knowledge, some went up a few hours before. Goldemering is an amateur fitter himself, and evidently it was he who had launched the trim again. Finally, they got up in the rapids all right, with local help, and are off with the chase afresh. I fear that boat may not be any better than for the accident. The peasantry tell us after all is upon smooth water again. She kept stopping every now and then, so long as she was in sight. We must push on harder than ever. Our help may be wanted soon. Mina Harker's Journal, 1st November. I arrived at Varsity at noon. The professor told me this morning at dawn that he could hardly hypnotize me at all, and that all I would say is dark and quiet. He is off now buying carriage horses. He says that he will later on try to buy additional horses, so that we may be able to change them on the way. We have something more than 70 miles before us. The country is lovely and most interesting. If only we were under different conditions, how delightful it would be to see it all. If Jonathan and I were driving through it alone, what a pleasure it would be. To stop and see people, to learn something of their life, to fill our minds and memories with all the color and picturesqueness of this whole wild, beautiful country, and the quaint people. But alas! Later. Dr. Van Helsing has returned. He has got the carriage and the horses. We're to have some dinner and to start in an hour. The landlady is putting us up in a huge basket of provisions. It seems enough for the company of soldiers. The professor encourages her and whispers to me again that it may be a week before we can get any food again. He has been shopping too, and has sent such a wonderful lot of fur coats and wraps, and all sorts of warm things. There will not be any chance of our being cold. We shall be off soon. I am afraid to think what might happen to us. We are truly in the hands of God. He alone knows what may be, and I pray him, with all the strength of any sad and humble soul, that he will watch over my beloved husband, that whatever may happen, Jonathan may know that I loved him, and honor in him more than I can say, and that my latest and truest thoughts will always be with him. Chapter 27. Mina Harker's Journal, 1st November. All day long we have traveled, and at good speed. The horses seem to know that they are being kindly treated, for they go willingly at the stage of best speed. We have now had so many changes that they sign the same thing so consistently that we are encouraged to think that this journey will be an easy one.
Dr. Van Helsing is laconic. He tells the farmers that he is hurrying to Barrett's and pays them well to make an exchange of horses. We get hot soup or coffee or tea, and off we go. It is a lovely country, full of beauties of all kinds imaginable, and people are brave and strong and simple, and seem full of nice qualities. They are very, very superstitious. In the first house we were stopped, when the woman who saw us saw the scar on my forehead, she crossed herself and put 2 fingers towards me, to keep off the evil eye. I believe they went to the trouble of putting an extra amount of garlic in our food, and I can't abide garlic. Ever since then I have taken care not to take off any of the hat or the veil, and so have escaped their suspicions. We are traveling fast, and as we have no driver with us to carry tales, we go ahead about the scandal, and I dare say the fear of the evil eye that will follow hard behind us all the way. The professor seems tireless. All day he would not take any rest, though he made me sleep for a long spell. At sunset time he hypnotized me, and he says that I answered as usual, darkness, lapping water, and creaking wood. So our enemy is still on the river. I am afraid to think of Jonathan, but somehow I have no fear for him, or for myself. I write this whilst we wait in the farmhouse for the horses to be got ready. Dr. Van Helsing is sleeping. Poor dear, he looks very tired, and old, and grey, and his mouth is set so firmly as a conqueror's. Even in sleep he is instinct with revolution. When we have well started, I must make him rest while I drive. I shall tell him that we have days before us, and he must not break down when most of all his strength will be needed. All is ready. We are off shortly. 2nd November, morning. I was successful, and we took turns driving all night, and now the day is on us, bright, though cold. There is a strange heaviness in the air. I say heaviness for want of a better word. I mean that it oppresses us both. It is very cold, and only our warm furs keep us comfortable. At dawn, Van Helsing hypnotized me. He says I answered darkness, creaking wood, roaring water. So the river was changing as this, and I do hope that my darling will not run any chance of danger, more than need be. But we are in God's hands. 2nd November, night. All day long driving, the country gets wilder as we go, and the spurs of the Carpathians, which the rest seemed so far from us, and now so low on the horizon, now seem to gather around us and tower in the front. We both seem in good spirits. I think we make an effort to each other to smile at the other, and in doing so we cheer ourselves. Dr. Van Helsing says that by morning we'll reach the Borgo Pass. The horses are very few here now. The professor says that the last horses we got will have to go on with us, as we may not be able to change. He got 2 in addition to the 2 we changed, so that now we have a ride for an hand. The dear horses are patient and good, and they give us no trouble. We're not worried with other travelers, and so even I can drive. So, shall we get to the pass in daylight? Do we not want to arrive before? So we take it easy, and we have each a long rest in turn. Oh, what will tomorrow bring to us? We go to seek the place where my poor darling suffered so much. God grant us that we may be guided all right, and that he will deign us to watch over my husband and my dear to us both. And who are in such deadly peril? As for me, I am not worthy of his sight. Alas, I am unclean in his eyes, and shall be until he may deign to let me stand forth in his sight as one of those who has not incurred his wrath.
Memorandum by Abraham von Helsing. 4th November.
This is to my old and true friend John Stewart, M.D., of Purfleet, London, in case I may not see him. It may explain it is morning, and I write by the fire which all the nights I have kept alive, Madam Mina aiding me. It is cold, cold, so cold that the heavy grey sky is full of snow, which when it falls will settle for all winter as the ground is hardening to receive it. It seems to have affected Madam Mina. She has been so heavy of head all day that she is not like herself. She sleeps and sleeps and sleeps. She, who is usually so alert, have done literally nothing all day. She even have lost her appetite. She make no entry into her little diary. She who writes so faithfully at every pause. Something whisper to me that all is not well. However, tonight she is more vif. Her long sleep all day have refreshed and restored her, for now she is all sweet and as bright as ever. At sunset I tried to hypnotize her, but, alas, with no effect. The power has grown less and less with each day, and tonight it shall fail me altogether. Well, God's will be done, whatever it may be, and whitherso it may lead. Now to the historical. For, as Madam Mina writes in her stenograph, I must, in my cumbrous old fashion, so that each day of us may not go unrecorded. We got to Borgo Pass just after sunrise yesterday morning. When I saw the signs of the day, I got ready for the hypnotism. We stopped our carriage, got down so that there might be no disturbance. I made a couch of furs, and Madam Mina, lying down, yielded herself as usual. But more slow and more short time than ever, to the hypnotic sleep. As before, came the answer. Darkness and swirling of water. When she woke, bright and radiant, and we go our way as soon as we reach the pass. At this time and place he became all on fire with zeal. Some new guiding power be in her manifested, for she points to a road and say, That is the way. How know you it? I asked. Of course I know it, she answered, and with a pause said, May have not Jonathan travelled it and wrote in his travel? At first I think somewhat strange, but as soon as I see that there be only one road, it be used a little, but very different from the coach road of Volcania and Bithurst, which is more wide and hard, and of more use. So we came down the road, when we meet other ways, not always where we were sure where the roads all are, for they be neglect, and light snow have fallen. The horses know, and they only. I give rein to them, and they go on patient. By and by we find all the things which Jonathan have noted in a wonderful diary of him. Then we go for long, long hours and hours. At first rest, I tell Mina to sleep. She try, and she succeed. She sleep all the time till at the last. I feel myself to suspicious grow, and attempt to wake her. But she sleep on, and I may not wake her, though I try. I do not wish to try too hard, lest I harm her, for I know that she have suffer much, and sleep at times be in all to her. I think I drowse myself, for all of a sudden I felt guilt, as though I had done something. I find myself bolt up, with the reins in my hand, and the good horses go along, jog, just as ever. I look down and find Madam Mina still asleep. It is now far from sunset time, and over the snow and the lights of the sun, a big yellow flood, so that we throw a great long shadow on where the mountain rise so steep. For we are going up, and all is so wild and rocky, as though it were the end of the world. Then I arouse Madam Mina. This time she awake with not much trouble. Then I try to put her in hypnotic sleep, but she sleep not, being as though I were not. Still I try and try, till all at once I find her and myself in dark. So I look around and find that the sun have gone down. Madam Mina laugh, and I look at her sharp. She's now quite awake, and looks so well as I never saw her since the night at Carfax, when we first entered the Count's house. I am amazed, and not at ease then. She is so bright, tender, and thoughtful for me that I forget all fear. I light a fire, for we have brought supply of wood with us, and she prepare food while I undo the horses and set them, tethered to shelter, to feed. When I return to the fire, she have given supper ready. I go to help her, but she smile, and tell me that she have eat already, that she was so hungry that she would not wait. I like it not, and have grave doubts. But I fear to affright her, and so I am silent of it. She help me, and I eat alone, and then we wrap in fur, and I lie beside the fire, and I tell her to sleep while I watch. But presently I forget all the watching, and when I suddenly remember that I watch, I find her lying quiet, but quite awake, and looking at me with so bright eyes. Once, twice more the same occur, and I get much sleep till before morning. When I wake, I try to hypnotize her, but alas, though she shut her eyes obedient, she may not sleep. The sun rise up, and up, and up, and then sleep come to her too, late, but so heavy that she will not wake. I lift her up and place her sleeping in the carriage when I have harnessed the horses and made all ready. Madam lay still asleep and sleep, and she look in her sleep more healthy and more redder than before. And I like it not. And I am afraid, afraid, afraid. I am afraid of all things, even to think, but I must go on my way. The stake we play for is life and death, and more than these, and we must not flinch.
5th November morning.
Let me be accurate in everything, for though you and I have seen some strange things together, you may be the first to think that I, Van Helsing, am mad. That the many horrors, and so the long strain of my nerves, have the last in my brain. All yesterday we travelled, getting closer to the mountains, and moving into more and more wild and desert land. There are great frowning precipices, and much falling water. Nature seemed to have held some time of her carnival. Madam Mina still sleep, and though I did not have hunger and appeased it, I could not awaken her, even for food. I began to fear that the fatal spell of the place was upon her, tainted as she is with the vampire baptism. Well, I said to myself, if it be that she sleep all day, it shall also be that I do not sleep at night. As we travel on the rough road, for the road of the ancient and imperfect kind there was, I held down my head and slept. Again I waked with a sense of guilt and of time past, and found Mina still sleeping and the sun low down. But all was indeed changed. The frowning mountains seemed further away, and we were near the top, the steep rising hill on the summit of which, such as a castle Jonathan tell in his diary. At once I exulted and feared, for now, for good or ill, the end was near. I woke Madam Mina, and again tried to hypnotize her, but alas, unavailing till too late. Ere the great dark came upon us, for even after the downward of the heavens, a glad sun had gone down on the snow, and all was for a time a great twilight. I took out the horses and fed them in the shelter that I could. Then I make a fire, and near it I make Madam Mina, now awake and more charming than ever, sits comfortably amid her rugs. I got ready for food, but she would not eat, simply saying that she had not hunger. I did not press her, knowing her unavailingness, but I myself ate, for I must needs to be strong for all. Then, with the fear on me of what might be, I drew a ring so big for her comfort around where Mina sat, and over the ring I passed some water, and I broke its fine lines so that all were guarded. She sat still all the time, so still as one dead, and she grew whiter and even whiter till the snow was not more pale, and no word she said. But when I drew near she clung to me, and I could know that the poor soul shook from head to feet with a tremble that was a pain to feel. I said to her presently, when she had grown more quiet, "Will you not come over to the fire?" For I wished to make rest of what she could. She rose obedient, and when she made a step and stopped, and stood as one stricken. "Why not go on?" I asked. She shook her head, and coming back sat down in her place. Then, looking at me with open eyes, as if one waked from sleep, she said simply, "I cannot," and remained silent. I rejoiced, for I knew that she could not. None of those that were dreaded could. Though there might be danger to her body, and yet her soul was safe. Presently the horses began to scream and tore at their tethers till I came to them and quieted them. When they did feel my hands on them, they whinnied low as in joy, and licked my hand and were quiet for a time. Many times through the night did I come to them, till it arrived to the cold hour when all nature is at its lowest, and every time my coming with them quiet was done, and the hour cold, the big fire began to die, and I was about stepping forth to replenish it. For now the snow came in flying sweeps and with chill mists. Even in the dark there was a light of some kind, and there ever is over snow, and it seemed as though the snow flurries and the wreaths of mist took shape of women with trailing garments. All was in dead, grim silence. Only the horses whinnied and cowered, as if in terror of the worst. I began to fear, horrible fears, but then came to me the sense of safety in the ring wherein I stood. I began, too, to think of my imaginings for of the night, and the gloom and unrest that I have gone through, and oh, terrible anxiety! It was as though all memories of all of Jonathan's horrible experience were befooling me, for the snowflakes and the mist began to wheel and circle around, till I could get as through the shadowy glimpse of those women that would have kissed him. And then the horses cowered and lowered and moaned in terror as men do in pain. Even the madness of fright was naught to them, so that they could break away. I feared for dear Madam Mina when these weird figures drew near and circled around. I looked at her, but she sat calm and smiled at me. When I would have stopped on the fire to replenish it, she caught me and held me back and whispered, like a voice that one hears in a dream. It was so low. "Oh, no, do not go without. Here you are safe." I turned to her and looked in her eyes and said, "But you, it is for you that I fear." Whereat she laughed. A low laugh was unreal, and she said, "Fear for me? Why fear for me? None safer in all the world from them than I am." And as I wondered at the meaning of her words, a puff of wind made the flame leap up, and I see the red scar on her forehead. Alas, I knew, did I not, I would soon be learned, for the wheeling figures of mists and snow came closer, but keeping over without the holy circle. Then they began to materialize still. If God have not taken away my reason, for I saw it through my eyes. There were before me in actual flesh the same 3 women that Jonathan saw in the room when they would have kissed my throat. I saw the swaying round forms, bright hard eyes, white teeth, the ruddy colour of voluptuous lips. They smiled ever at poor dear Madam Mina, and as her laugh came through the silence of the night, they twined their arms and joined to her, and said in those sweet, tingling tones that Jonathan said were their inconsolable sweetnesses of the water glasses. Come, sister, come to us. Come, come. I turned to my poor Madam Mina, and my heart with gladness leapt like fire. No, the terror in her sweet eyes, the repulsion, the horror, told a story to my heart that it was all of hope. God be thanked she was not yet one of them. I seized some of the firewood which was by me, and holding out some of the wafer, I advanced on them towards the fire. They drew back before me and laughed their low, horrid laugh. I fed the fire and feared them not, for I knew that we were safe within our protections. They could not approach me while so armed, nor Madam Mina while she remained within the ring, which she could not leave no more than they could enter. The horses had ceased to moan, and lay still on the ground. The snow fell on them softly, and they grew whiter. I knew that they were, for the poor beasts were no more of terror. And so we remained till the red of the dawn began to flow through the snow globe. I was desolate and afraid, and full of woe and terror. But when that beautiful sun began to climb the horizon, life was new to me again. At the first coming of the dawn, the horrid figures melted into the whirling mist and snow. The wreaths of transparent gloom moved away towards the castle, and were lost. Instinctively, with the dawn coming, I turned to Madam Mina, intending to hypnotize her, but she lay in a deep and sudden sleep, from which I could not wake her. I tried to hypnotize through her sleep, but she made no response. Not at all, and the day broke. I fear yet to stir. I have made my fire and have seen the horses. They are all dead. Today I have much to do here. I keep waiting till the sun is up high, for there may be places where I must go, where that sunlight, through snow and mist obscure it, will be to me a safety. I will strengthen me with breakfast, and then I will go to the terrible work. Madam Mina sleeps still, and, God be thanked, she is calm in her sleep.
Jonathan Harker's journal, 4th November, evening. The accident to the launch had been a terrible thing for us. Only for it we should have overtaken the boat long ago, and now by my dear Mina would be free. I fear to think of her, off on the roads near that horrid place. We have got horses, and we follow the track. I note that while Skonebring is getting ready, we have our arms. The Snagzy must look out of the mean fight. But if only Morris and Seward were here with us. But we must only hope. If I write no more, goodbye, Mina. God bless and keep you. Dr. Seward's Diary, 5th November. With the dawn, we saw the body of Svensi before us dashing away over the river in their letter wagon. They surrounded in a lackluster and hurried along the besets. The snow is falling lightly, and there is a strange excitement in the air. It may be our own excited feelings, but the depression is strange. Far off, I hear the howling of wolves. The snow brings them down from the mountains, and there are dangers to all of us, and from all sides. The horses are nearly ready, but we are soon off. We ride to death of someone. God alone knows who, or where, or what, or when, and how it might be. Dr. Van Helsing's Memorandum. 5th November, afternoon.
I am at least sane. Thank God for the mercy that of all events, though the proving it has been dreadful. When I left Madam Mina sleeping in the holy circle, I took my way to the castle. The blacksmith hammer which I took from the carriage of Versi was useful. Though the doors were all open, I broke them off the rusty hinges, lest some ill instant and ill chance should close them again, so that being entered I might not get out. Jonathan's bitter experience served me here. By memory of his diary, I found my way to the old chapel, for I knew that here must my day work. The air is oppressive. It seemed as if there would be some sulphurous fume, which at times make me dizzy. Either there is some roaring in my ears, or I was far behind the howl of wolves. Then I bethought me of my dear Madam Mina, and I was in terrible plight. The dilemma had me between its horns. Her I dare not take inside this place, but left safe in the vampire of the Holy Circle. And yet, even there would be a wolf. I resolved me that my work lay here, and as to the wolves we must submit, if it were God's will. At any rate, it was only death and freedom beyond. So did I choose for her. Had it been for myself, the choices would have been easy. The maw of the wolf were better than the rest than the grave of the vampire. So I make my choice to go on with my work. I knew that there were at least 3 graves to find, graves that are inhabited. So I search and find one of them. She lay in her vampire sleep, so full of life and voluptuous beauty that I shudder at the thought that I have come to do murder. Ah, I doubt not that in old time, when such things were, many a man who set forth to do such a task as mine found at last the heart fail him and then his nerve. So he delay and delay and delay, till the mere beauty and the fascination of the wanton undead have hypnotized him, and remain on and on till sunset and the vampire sleep be over. And then the beautiful eyes of the fair woman look love, and the voluptuous mouth present a kiss, and the man is weak, and there remain one more victim of the vampire fold, these ranks of the undead. There's some fascination, surely, when I am moved by the mere presence of one such, even lying as she lay in the tomb, fretted with age and heavy with the dust of centuries. Though there may be that horrid odour, such as the layers of the Count have had. Yes, I was moved. I, Van Helsing, with all my purpose and with my motive for hate, I was moved to yearning for delay, which seemed to paralyze my faculties and to clog my very soul. It may have been that the need of natural sleep or the strange oppression of the air were beginning to overcome me. Certain it was that I was lapsing into sleep, the open-eyed sleep of one who yields to a sweet fascination, when there came through the snow-stilled air a long, low wail, so full of woe and pity that it woke me like the sound of a clarion. For it was the voice of dear Madam Mina that I heard. Then I braced myself again to the horrid task, and found the wrenching way of the tomb tops, and the others of the sisters, the other dark one. I dared not pause to look at her as I had on her sister, lest once again I should begin to thorough. But I go on searching until presently I find a high great tomb, of which was made one beloved, the other fair sister, which, like Jonathan, I had seen to gather herself out of the atoms of the mist. She was so fair to look on, so radiantly beautiful, so exquisitely voluptuous, that the very instinct of man in me, which calls some of my sex to love and protect one of hers, made my head whirl with new emotion. But God thanked me, and that soul wail of my dear Madam Mina had not died out of my ears. And before the spell could wrought itself further upon me, I nerved myself to my wild work. By this time I had searched all the tombs of the chapel, so as far as I could tell, and there had been only there the three undead phantoms around us in the night. I took it that there were no more active undead in existence. There was one great tomb, more lordly than all the rest. Huge it was, and nobly proportioned. On it was but one word: Dracula. Then this was the undead home of the king vampire, to whom so many more were due. Its emptiness spoke eloquence to make certain what I knew. Before I began to restore these women to their dead selves through my awful work, I laid in Dracula's tomb some of the wafer, and so banished him from it, undead forever. Then began my terrible task, and I dreaded it. Had it been but once, it would have been easy, comparative. But three. To begin twice more after I had been through the deed of horror, for it had been terrible with sweet Miss Lucy. What would it have been with these strange ones who had survived through centuries, and who had been strengthened by the passing of years, who would, if they could, have fought for their own lives? Oh, friend Jonathan, but it was butcher work. Had I not been nerved by such thoughts of other dead, and of the living over whom hung such a pall of fear, I could not have gone on. I tremble, and tremble even yet, though till all was over, God be thanked, my nerve did stand. Had I not seen the repose of the first face, and the gladness that stole over just as the mere final dissolution came, the realization that the soul had been won, I could not have gone further with my butchery. I had not endured the horrid screeching as the stake drove home, the plunging of the writhing form, the lips of blood and foam. I should have fled in terror and left my work undone. But it is over, and the poor souls, I can pity them now and weep, as I think them placid, each in their full sleep of death. For a short moment ere fading. For, friend Jonathan, hardly had my knife severed in each hand's case, before the whole body began to melt away and crumble into its native dust, as though the death that should have come centuries agone had at last assert itself, and say at once and loud, I am her. Before I left the castle, I was so fixed by entrances that I never more can the count enter there undead. When I stepped into the circle where Madam Mina slept, she woke from her sleep, and seeing me, cried out in pain that I had endured so much.
Come,
She said,
come away from this awful place. Let us go to meet my husband, who is, I know, coming for us.
She was looking thin and pale and weak, but her eyes were pure and glowed with fervor. I was glad to see her paleness and her illness, for my mind was full of the fresh horror of the ruddy vampire's sleep. And so, with trust and hope, and yet full of fear, we go eastward to meet our friends, and him, whom Madam Mina tell me that she know was coming to meet us.
Mina Harker's Journal, 6th November.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming. We did not go fast, though the way was steeply downhill, for we had to take heavy rugs and wraps with us. We dared not face the possibility of being left without warmth in the snow and the cold. We had to take some of our provisions, too, for we were in perfect desolation, and so far as we could see through the snowfall, there was not even a sign of habitation. When we had gone about a mile,
I was tired with the heavy walking and sat down to rest. Then we looked back and saw where the clear line of Dracula's castle cut the sky, for we were so deep under the hill whereupon it sat that the angle of perspective of the Carpathian Mountains was far below it. We sat and saw it in all its grandeur, perched 1,000 feet on the summit of a sheer precipice, and with seemingly a great gap between it and the steep of an adjacent mountain on the other side. There was something wild and uncanny about the place. We could hear the distant howling of wolves. They were far off, but the sound, even through them coming muffled through the deadening snowfall, was full of terror. I knew from Dr. Van Helsing searching that way he was protecting to seek some strategic point where he would be less exposed to a case of attack. The rough road still led downwards. We could trace it through the drifted snow. It was a while after the professor signaled me that we got up and joined him. He had found a wonderful spot, a sort of natural hollow in a rock, with an entrance like a doorway between two boulders. He took me by my hand and drew me in. "See," he said, "here you will be in shelter, and if the wolves do come, I can meet them one by one." He thought in our furs, and made a snug nest for me. He got some provisions and forced them upon me, but I could not eat. To even try to do so was repulsive to me, and as much as I would have liked to please him, I could not bring myself to attempt. He looked very sad, but did not approach me. Taking his field glasses from the case, he stood on top of the rock and began to search the horizon. Suddenly he called out, "Look, Madamina! Look! Look!" I sprang up and stood beside him on the rock, and he handed me the glasses and pointed. The snow was falling more heavily, and swirled about fiercely, and the high wind was beginning to blow. However, there were times when there were pauses between the snow flurries. I could see the long way around. From the height we were, it was possible to see a great distance, and far off beyond the white waste of the snow, I could see the river lying like a black ribbon in kinks and curls around its way. Straight in front of us, and not far off, in fact, so near that I wondered we had not noticed before, came a group of mounted men hurrying along. In the midst of them was a long cart, which swept from side to side like a dog's tail wagging, with each of them sternly equally on the road, outlined the snow as they went. I could see from the men's clothes that they were peasants or gypsies of some kind. On the cart was a great square chest. My heart leaped as I saw it, for I felt that the end was coming. The evening was now drawing close, and well I knew that the sunset, the thing, which was till then imprisoned there, would take new freedom and could any of other forms elude us all pursuit. In fear I turned to the professor. To my consternation, however, he was not there. An instant later I saw him below me. Round the rock he had drawn a circle, which, such as we had found sheltered last night. When he had completed it, he stood beside me again, saying, "At least you will be safe here from him." He took the glasses from me, and the next floe of the snow swept the whole space below us. "See," he said, "they come quickly. They are flogging their horses and galloping as hard as they can." He paused, and he went in a hollow voice. "They are racing the sunset. We may be too late. God's will be done." Down came another blinding rush of driving snow, and the whole landscape was blotted out. It soon passed, however, and once more his glasses were fixed on the plain, and then a sudden cry. "Look, look, look! See 2 horsemen following fast, coming up from the south. It must be Quincy and John. Take the glass, look before the snow blots it all out." I took it and looked. The 2 men might be Dr. Stewart and Mr. Morse. I knew at all events that neither of them were looking Jonathan. the same time, I knew that Jonathan was not far off. Looking around, I saw the north side an incoming party of 2 other men, riding at breakneck speed. One of them I knew was Jonathan, and the other I took, of course, was Lord Godalming. They, too, were pursuing the party with the cart. When I told the professor, he shouted with glee like a schoolboy. And, after looking intently till the snowfall made it impossible, he laid his Winchester rifle ready for use against the boulder at the opening of the shelter.
"They are all converging," he said. "When the time comes, we shall have the gypsies on all sides. I got my revolver ready in hand. For whilst we are speaking, the howling of the wolves came louder and louder. When the snowstorm abated the moment we looked again, and it was strange to see the snow falling in such heavy flakes so close to us, and beyond, the sun shining more and more brightly as it sank towards the far mountain tops.
Sweeping the glass all around us, I could see here and there dots moving singly and in twos, 3 in large numbers. The wolves were gathering for their prey. Every instant seemed age whilst we waited. The wind came now in fierce bursts, and the snow was driven in flurry as it swept upon the circling eddies. At times we could not see an arm's length before us, but the others that the hollow-sounding wind swept by us. It seemed to clear the airspace round us so that we could see far off. We had of late been so accustomed to watch the sunrise and sunset that we knew with fair accuracy when it would be, and we knew that before long the sun would set. It was hard to believe that by our watches it was less than an hour that we waited for the rocky shelter before the various bodies began to converge close upon us. The wind came now with fiercer and more bitter sweeps, more steadily from the north. It seemed they had driven snow clouds from us, for the occasional bursts the snow fell. We could distinguish clearly the individuals of each party, the pursued and the pursuers. Strangely enough, those pursued did not seem to realize, or at least to care, that they were pursued. They seemed, however, to hasten with redoubled speed as the sun dropped lower and lower on the mountain tops. Closer and closer they drew. The professor and I crouched down behind our rock and held our weapons ready. I could see that they was determined that they should not pass. One and all were quite aware of our presence. All at once 2 voices shouted up to "Halt!" One was Jonathan's in a high key of passion, the other in Mr. Morris's strong, resolute tone, quiet command. The gypsies may not have understood the language, but there was no mistaking the tone. In whatever language these words were spoken. Instinctively they reined in, and at the instant Lord Godalming and Jonathan dashed up to one side, and Dr. Stewart and Mr. Morris on the other. The leader of the gypsies, a splendid-looking fellow, who sat like his horse like a centaur, waved them back, and in a fierce voice gave to the companions some word to proceed. They lashed their horses, which sprang forward, and the 4 men raised their Winchester rifles, and in an unmistakable way commanded them to stop. At the same moment, Dr. Van Helsing and I rose behind a rock and pointed our weapons at them. Seeing that they were surrounded, the men tightened their reins and drew up. The leader turned to them and gave a word, at which every man of the gypsy party drew a weapon that he carried, knife or pistol, and held himself in readiness to attack. The issue was joined in an instant. The leader, with a quick movement of his rein, threw his horse out of the front, and pointing first to the sun, now close to the hilltops, then to the castle, said something I did not understand, for in answer all 4 men in our party threw themselves to their horses and dashed towards the cart. I should have felt terrible at seeing Jonathan in such danger, but with the ardor of the battle he must have been upon me, as well as the rest of them. I felt no fear, but only the wild surging desire to do something. Seeing the quick movement of our parties, the leader of the gypsies gave a command, and his men instinctively formed around the cart in some undisciplined behavior, each one of them shouldering and pushing with the other with eagerness to carry out the order. In the midst of this I could see that Jonathan was on one side of the ring, men and Quincy on the other were forcing a way to the cart. It was evident that they were bent on finishing their task before the sun should set. Nothing seemed to stop or even to hinder them. Neither the leveled weapons or the flashing knives of the gypsies in front, or the howling of the wolves behind, appeared to even attract their attention. Jonathan's impetuosity and the manifest singleness of his purpose seemed to overawe those in front of him. Instinctively they cowered aside and let him pass. But an instant he had jumped upon the cart, and, with a strength which seemed incredible, he raised the great box and flung it over the wheel to the ground. In the meantime, Mr. Morris had had to use the force to pass through his side of the ring of signaling. All the time I had been breathless, watching Jonathan. I had, with the trail in my eye, seen him pressing desperately forward, and had seen the knives of the gypsies flash. He won a way through them, and he cut at them. He parried with his great bowie knife, and at first I thought that he too had come through the safety. But as he sprang beside Jonathan, who had now been jumped by the side of the cart, I could see now that the left hand was clutching at his side, and that blood was spurting in through his fingers. He did not delay, notwithstanding this, for as Jonathan, with desperate energy, attacked one end of the chest and prized to pry the lid off with his great Cabresi knife, he attacked the other frantically with his bowie. Under the efforts of both men, the lid began to yield. The nails drew with a thick, quickening screech sound. The top of the box was thrown back. By this time, the gypsies, seeing themselves covered with Winchesters and at the mercy of Lord Godalming and Dr. Seward, had given in and made no further resistance. The sun was almost down on the mountain tops. The shadows of the whole group fell long on the snow. I saw the Count lying within the open box on the earth, some of which had fallen from the cart and scattered over him. He was deathly pale, just like a waxen image, the red eyes glaring with a horrible vindictive look which I knew too well. As I looked, the eyes of the sinking sun, the look of hate in them turned to triumph. But on the instant came the sweep and flash of Jonathan's great knife. I shrieked as I saw it shear through the throat, whilst at the same moment Mr. Morse's bowie knife plunged into the heart. It was like a miracle. Before our very eyes, and almost in the drawing of my breath, the whole body crumbled into dust and passed from our sight. I shall be glad as long as I live that even in the moment of final dissolution that there was in the face a look of peace, such as I never could have imagined or might have rested there. The castle of Dracula now stood against the red sky, and every stone of its broken battlements was articulated against the light of the setting sun. The gypsies, taking us as in some way the cause of the extraordinary disappearance of the dead man, turned without a word and rode away as if for their lives. Those who were unmounted jumped upon the letter wagon and shouted to the horsemen not to desert them. The wolves, which had withdrawn to a safe distance, followed in their wake, leaving us alone. Mr. Morris, who had sunk to the ground, leaned on his elbow, holding his hand pressed to his side. The blood was still gushing through his fingers. I flew to him, for the holy circle did not now keep me back. So did the two doctors. Jonathan knelt behind him, and the wounded man laid his head on his shoulder. With a sigh he took, with a feeble effort, my hand, and that his own, which was unstained. He must have seen the anguish in my heart in his face, for he smiled at me just the same. I'm only too happy to have been of any service. Oh, God, he cried suddenly, struggling up the sitting posture and pointing to me. It was worth this to die. Look, look. The sun was now right upon the mountain top, and the red gleams fell upon my face, so that it was bathed in a rosy light. With one impulse, the man sank to his knees, and in a deep and earnest amen broke from all. Their eyes followed, pointing his finger. The dying man spoke. Thank God. Now God be thanked that this was not in vain. See, the snow is more stainless than her forehead. The curse has passed away. And to our bitter grief, with a smile and silence, he died. A gallant gentleman. Note: 7 years ago, we all went through the flames, and the happiness of some that has been since, we think, worth the pain we endured. It is an added joy to Mina and to me that our boy's birthday is the same day on which Quincy Morris died. His mother holds, I know, that the secret belief that some of our brave friend's spirit may have passed to him. His bundle of names links all their little band of men together, but we called him Quincy. In the summer of this year, we made a journey to Transylvania and went over to the old ground which was, and is, to us, still so full of vivid and terrible memories. It was almost impossible to believe all the things which we had seen with our own eyes and heard with our own ears were fleeting truths. Every trace of all we'd had was blotted out. The castle stood as before, reared high above the wastes of desolation. When we got home, we got to talking of old times, which we could all look back on without despair. For Goldemering and Seward were both happily married. I took the papers from the safe where they have been ever since our return so long ago. We were struck to the fact that in all the massive material of which the record is composed, there is hardly one authentic document. Nothing but a mass of typewriting except the later notebooks of Mina and Seward and myself and Van Helsing's memorandum. We could hardly ask anyone, even did we wish to accept these as proofs of so wild a story. Van Helsing summed it up as all he could, with our boy on his knee.
We want no proofs. We ask none to believe us. This boy will some day know that we have a brave and gallant woman his mother is. Already he knows her sweetness and her loving care. Later on he will understand how some men so loved her that they did dare much for her sake.
Jonathan Harker.